Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dungeon Diving today. We are today talking about encounter building. With me to, I guess introductions are in order. I may have skipped over that. My name is Ben, also known as Metamongoose on the wider internet. With me is one of our DMs, Ray, also known as Romulus here on our Discord, and the Unreal Ted, also known as Milk Mechanic. He is our AV guy. He is awesome.
Hello.
And with all of that information along, we are going to be today talking about how we kind of come together to build encounters or kind of construct various like adventures in like the smaller chunks. We're not doing like full campaign talk today. We're just more discussing kind of like how one would approach like an encounter build for a short adventure or something along those lines. So with that, let's get right into it. So as far as encounters for an adventure, let's start with the smaller scale and work our way up. So like for a one-shot adventure, if we were building like a one-shot adventure, how many encounters would you how many kinds of what like not all encounters have to be monster encounters. Let's be very clear about that. But how many encounters would you fit into a one shot, and kind of how would you kind of construct them? So Romulus, do you have a how do you play out on this one?
So for a one shot, um, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for mentioning the fact that not everything should be an encounter.
Right.
I think you
Or
brought up
not every encounter should be monsters. That's
correct.
that's
Yeah.
very
Correct.
important.
Correct. An encounter could be a chase. An encounter could be a social interaction where you get experience. You can put a challenge rating to an encounter. So just to answer the question, for a one shot, I feel 4 is the magical number. 4 to 3.
Yeah, I
4
like
if you want to
3.
do, yeah, 4 if you want to have like small series encounters. So I like 4. 4 is my number. I look at it as like 2 physical encounters, 1 social encounter, and then like a group challenge or something like that.
Or
And
like a
that's your,
puzzle or something.
yeah, a puzzle, and that's your 4 encounters. If you're gonna go combat heavy, like with a big boss, something like that, then 3 is I think a good number where you still have your social challenge, which allows for the role playing. Your second, which is your sets the mood, right? It should be your easy encounter. It just sets up what you're fighting. Indiana Jones fighting the weak Nazis in the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark before he gets and fights the real Nazis that are dangerous later on in the movie, which is your boss. So yeah, 3 to 4 is my number for for the number of encounters in a one shot. Yeah.
So for me, it depends on. So I do a lot of the one shots on Mondays here on the server, and so when I'm constructing them, a lot of the times we usually do like a. There's definitely like one like short combat for like the smaller monsters. There tends to be some kind of a puzzle or exploration, like kind of it. Like I don't I don't count exploration as just things people do in between encounters. There is so like one of the early adventures that I did, the Sorcerer's Feast, is a adventure where you're basically exploring the old house, the old like manor house of an ancient wizard. And so there's a lot of weird stuff that you can just kind of come across and just see and try to piece together what it means. But like in all likelihood, like it doesn't really hurt you in any way. It's just being able to explore the space and getting in there. And I kind of count that as an encounter because it takes up time, but it doesn't always like it challenges the players as they all spend time like sitting there explaining to one another like, wow, there's these tubes with like robots in them, and when we accidentally trigger them, like they fill with goo and come out and try to like, I don't know, take our cloaks or cook us dinner or something, because they're automated servants, but they don't know that. Like the first party I ran through there like attacked them because they thought they were monsters trying to steal their stuff. Um, and that in itself kind of became an encounter, like a combat encounter that was kind of very lopsided.
Yeah.
because the other side didn't fight
Your
back.
servants. Yeah.
Right. Or there was an exploration encounter where there's this big room full of like treasures that the ancient wizard had kept, and they're all like horribly cursed items that no one should ever try to keep. But like the players could interact with them and that would do stuff. Like if they grabbed a cube and wandered away with it, the cube would like wrench itself physically back to its pedestal at some point. Or there was but there was other stuff like in the room that they could interact with. And it wasn't as much a puzzle, but it was just exploring the space that in itself was an encounter.
Yeah.
So I like having like a little combat encounter, some kind of exploration or puzzle, and then maybe like a boss kind of fight at the end to cap it off, or like some great puzzle, or maybe if it's not a great boss, like the Sorcerer's Feast actually only has uh two combat encounters, and you can arguably ignore one of them completely as the DM for like time. It's basically if the party goes to the left first, that's the combat encounter they get into, and if they go to the right, that's the other combat encounter they do. But there's so much stuff to do just exploring the space that in the time slot I have allotted, there's not always time for both combat encounters. So that way I have the ability to just pull one if there's just not enough time. So just having a little bit of a module system that way where you can kind of pull encounters as needed,
Yeah.
just to keep time limits is nice. But yeah, I usually try to keep it to about 3, I think, for a good one shot. Like
Yeah.
maybe 4, but definitely 3 is a sweet spot for me.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I agree.
Milk, you've run a one shot, right?
Run 2 on the server so far.
Yeah, yeah. How have yours like panned out in that regard?
Uh, the first one was very mystery intrigue, so a lot of social encounters. Um, two combats. So it was like I would say 5 or 6. It was a pretty like 4.5 hour long one shot.
Okay,
But we
so
moved
it's
we
a little bit
moved
longer.
yeah, but the social encounters were short, mostly to push along the story. But I don't know, when I build encounters, I like using a lot of cause and effect. For example, objects that can be interacted with in the fight, or like, social cues, like for distraction, someone can knock over something, cause a distraction. Like I like letting my players come up with creative solutions. So I try and reward that.
Good. You should.
Yeah,
Those
like
are
Yeah,
I
cool.
love
always encourage players to use the scenery.
yeah, like I
Yeah.
love I love leaving like lit fireplaces and camps. I love like stalagmites and caves. I love anything that can fall over. I love when players combo spells, like how I did in one of your one shots, Ben. I casted grease. Someone
Hmm.
casted bonfire on the grease. I
Yep,
love stuff like
it's
that.
classic D&D combo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. It works so well.
Yep. Yep.
So for encounter building specifically, how, like if you were putting together an encounter just in general for something, like what is your process for when you're putting together an encounter?
I
Um,
mean, it heavily depends on scenery.
Interesting. I find it interesting that you said scenery over the players.
Well, I mean, if it's a one shot, right? So I'm not really looking at the players because the plot of the one shot has nothing to do with the players or what they're playing. A lot of the
Hmm.
one shots there, right? If I'm in a dungeon, I'm gonna have, depending on the theme of the dungeon, maybe it's like an undead crypt. I'm gonna have lots of undead creatures. Perhaps we're in a forest. I'm gonna have lots of like beasts. Uh, for example, the plot of that one shot I ran, had to do with orcs. The primary encounter had to do with, or one of the encounters had to do with orcs. Like I don't necessarily base my encounters off the players, I definitely go
Right.
with
For
plot.
one shots, there's less
Yeah.
need for that because
Yeah.
For that. Mhm.
any you're only going to play the game once,
Right.
and whatever group shows up is the
That's
mix
what
you're
shows up.
playing with.
Yeah.
Very Adventure League.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
You
much
get
in
what you
that
get,
regard. Yeah.
It's a very one size fits all kind of situation.
So Romulus, when you're putting together an encounter, what's your starting line, and how do you build up from there?
Okay, so for me, it's kind of interesting. We were talking a little bit before we started recording. Is I kind of find a picture that inspires me, or I find a map that I like. I'm always, I'm involved and enrolled in a lot of Patreon maps. I'm involved in like Facebook, a lot of the RPG map creators. I participate. I add, and a lot of those you have to make your own map at least once a month, and then you can share that map and you can take their maps and it's free licensing. So it's like the way to go. And so what I do is there's always someone way better at making maps than I am, I'll tell you that. And so I grab a map, I'm like, wow, that's a cool map. If it's like a lava, like let's say it's like a cool dungeon with lava, animation lava on it, or there's like a bunch of spiders and I get a drow feeling. That is what inspires me to make the encounter. And I rotate the adventure around that map. So like if it's a really cool map and I'm like, that's where the boss is going to be. Man, that's got lava. I want fire salamander to be the main villain. And okay, so what makes sense to me? I want to synergize my encounters. Oh, well, maybe there's Azers, or maybe there's Durgers, or maybe there's Magmin, right? I think of the mini campaign where they went into the mine that I ran, where they went into a mine, and the whole basis was that druids were trying to evict, trying to kill all the miners. They had done some mining and broke into sacred ground. The miners and the druids wanted them gone, and they had tried multiple times warning them. They refused to listen, and they resorted to violence. And so one of them casted an earth elemental. So I decided, well, in the process of the earth elemental being born in this mine, due to the disruption of the consecrated ground, it allowed for magmen to also appear. So you had magmen, right? You had the main boss was the earth elemental. I had this cool mine. I had magmen and fire snakes, things that made sense to the encounter. So that's how I run my encounters. I find a cool map, I choose a cool boss, and then I rotate and make it appear as if the players have choice, because really they really don't have choice, right? It's a linear choice. It's the false idea that they're having choice. Just like I'm a firm believer that what makes a good game is not killing the players; it's the players thinking that they're going to die.
Right.
Right. Like
Right.
I couldn't tell you the last time I killed a player. I'm not kidding.
The last time I killed a player was completely on accident, and it was in a published adventure, and I felt really bad about it.
Yeah. Like I think the last
there
time
was in Dungeon of the Mad Mage, there's a scene, there's like a floor that's like an obstacle course, and there's like a lot of teleportation squares that like split up the party.
Mhm.
And I did not notice that one of the teleportation squares has a chance to randomly just open over the chasm of lava. And my rogue got separated from the party by a teleportation square, and we rolled to see where he ended up, and it was like, well, I guess you fall into the chasm of lava. And he's like, and we were going through like every bit of his sheet, being like, how do we save you? Like, do you have any rope? He's like, no, we actually used it on the trap back there. I'm like, do you have this? Do you have this? He's like, no. Like, is there any magic that we could use? And he's like, well, there might be, but we were looking, and it's like the chasm specifically is a trap that says like, if anyone uses magic to circumvent getting over it, the magic automatically fails and they die. And I'm just like, I can't save this guy. I've tried so hard. And he was fine with it. Like we kind of laughed about it afterwards, about how ridiculous it was that we couldn't save him. But yeah, like it's all about keeping the party, like going, and no one. I keep bringing it to like movies. Like nobody wants to watch a movie where like every other scene, 2 more characters die and are replaced by 2 new characters you don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a whole different topic. I understand,
right?
But see, so that's how I construct. I mean, my encounters get built around the map, I like keeping synergy. I think of who my main boss is and who the followers would be. It also is dependent on my mood. So like if I'm feeling tactical, then I try to use tactical creatures. Something that I've never liked in playing with the other dungeon masters, me as a player, is when I see the dungeon master running every encounter like they're super genius, like it's a game of chess. It's not a game of chess. A hobgoblin and an orc fight completely different. Animals
Right.
shouldn't be selective over who they're fighting. In that regard, I also don't like random chance. When a DM will say, like, let's say there's a bear and there's three players, a wizard, a fighter, and a rogue, and the bear can't decide who it attacks, and or the hobgoblin, right? It's a hobgoblin, a tactical creature, and he's
Right.
like he doesn't want to pick, he doesn't want to kill the wizard, right? Or he doesn't want to kill
Right.
the
He
so
doesn't want to be very obvious about the fact that
right.
maybe the
So
wizard should go. But the
yes, so
hobgoblin
he'll
would definitely kill the wizard
correct,
because he's a
right?
tactical creature.
Correct, right? But no, instead the DM will roll something like a D8. Oh, 2-4 evens, you'll get hit. 3-4, you get hit. 5-6, what? What are you
Right.
talking
No.
about, bro? How about the archers attack the person? If there's a rogue hiding who's using aim shot, right, and doing sneak damage on everyone, wouldn't the archers focus on that one thief
Right.
who's out
Pin
there
him down.
smoking?
Pin him
Yeah,
down with arrows.
like
Don't let him out.
so I never understood where players or GMs are like intentionally making their monsters do things that I feel are inappropriate to what their actions should be. Animals, in my opinion, should attack the last person that attacks them
Yeah.
or the closest thing that's available. In that regard, I've had players sometimes do really cool things to monsters. Like there was one where they were attacked by a pack of wolves, and you know what the player did? He's like, "Oh, I take out my standard rations and I throw them at the side." Well, okay, wouldn't the wolves go towards the stake?
Right. Theoretically, like
And he did.
that's the hope.
He defeated the encounter. He got experience for defeating the encounter. He's
Mhm.
like, "Let's go. Let's get out of here while they're eating the steak." He defeated those monsters, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you solve the encounter. You don't have to kill the monsters to
Yeah.
beat the encounter.
Exactly.
You have to defeat you have to solve the problem.
Exactly. And so yeah, so that's my 2 cents on how I construct my encounters. It's like depending what mood. Also a little bit, very little. For one shots, it's different. I agree about the players. But
Yeah.
like I tend to not run one shots very often. I like mini campaigns. I like campaigns. So
Yeah.
I'm always thinking what the players are. If the players are very magical, then I want to choose creatures that are resistant to magic. If I have a lot of rangers and druids and they're shape changing and stuff like that, then I want more combative monsters. So all of that does take, it goes into my head on what I want to go against the players. But on one shots, yeah, you're right. I do agree with you with this is my theme, this is the adventure, this is the plot point, and whatever you choose, that's what you're going to go
Yeah.
up against.
Well, it's different comparing one shots to campaigns, even mini campaigns. One shots are very, this is what's happening. Whatever you choose, that's up to you. We're going. Another thing is you don't have to. Well, actually, before I say this, pacifying an enemy is the same thing as beating an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Correct.
Again, you're solving the problem of that enemy being your enemy. However you solve that problem.
Yeah, but you don't always have to win the encounter to finish the encounter. I like limiting your choice of monsters to what only your players can handle can get stale sometimes, especially if you've been playing for a long time. Like, how many goblins are you going to throw at your players? How many wolves are you going to throw at your players? Eventually, you might find that it's nice to throw something with a higher challenge rating, and then they don't have to stay for the entire fight. They can just leave. Maybe that giant bear takes enough damage.
Players don't like to retreat.
No,
right.
No.
It is very hard. You have to, sometimes as a DM, you have to look at them in the eye and be like, let us be honest with each other, children. Like, you're not going to kill this monster today.
I'm not even saying that. Your monster can retreat for a variety of reasons.
Right.
Well, yeah.
It can.
Perhaps
but it's very hard for players to retreat. We as a group of players do not take those kind of odds poorly. I have seen players that avoid fights that they think are too strong, but once they are in a fight, there isn't really, like, they've committed. and it's gonna go one way or the other. So it's up
Yeah.
to you as the DM to pull back at that point.
Yeah. But
or
I'm just
or
saying
or knock them all out and capture the group, and that's a whole nother adventure.
you can show your players the cool monsters that they want to see that they may not necessarily be ready for. It's just you have to also keep in mind that they can't fight those monsters to completion. They might die. But you can show them that, dragon. You can show them the cool monsters that they want to see.
Now, for when I was doing encounter building for a while, I am very art asset dependent on my encounter builds. As I was telling you earlier, Milk, like I'm trying to get my encounter stuff ready for Monday's game, and the minute I hop onto Pinterest to look for something, I'm busy for like 3 hours and have 4 folders worth of new art assets that I didn't have before, but are no closer to actually getting the thing I needed done.
Yeah, like that's cool,
but,
yoink. That's cool, yoink. I'm
right,
still looking
yep.
for that one picture of a fish warrior, though.
But yeah, I did find a really fun picture of my monster that I'm totally using on Monday. But that hasn't gotten me much further in like actually designing like my encounters and stuff like I should be doing. But yeah, so I am very art asset dependent. I like to be able to build the idea of what the encounter should be in my mind first, and like the look and feel of it. What I really miss from the 4th ed era, in the monster manuals there, they had encounter groups that were really handy. Where like if you skim through and it's like, you're gonna fight some lizard men today, so you go to the lizard man page and they'd be like, hey, just so you know, here are some encounter groups for lizard, and they're not always like homogenous. It's sometimes it's like, here are 2 lizard men and their fire, their guard drake, or here are like 3 goblins and an ochre jelly, and you're like, well, why do the goblins have an ochre jelly? Like, what? And then that causes you to kind of like spiral out from there, being like, all right, well, maybe they captured an ochre jelly to do something, and now they're raiders and they have to take care of their pet jelly, and then you can kind of build kind of like a rationale behind the monsters and how they do things based on stuff like that. And I'm really sad that 5th edition didn't continue the trend of encounter groups, because it gave new DMs kind of like a building block to be like, don't throw all the same kind of monster at your party. Do not be afraid to mix and match a little bit.
Yes, I believe that wholeheartedly. I'm a big fan of orcs.
Yeah,
and there's only 3 orcs.
Yeah, there's a couple orcs.
Well, I mean, different. Some orcs don't get along with other orcs, like the orcs of
Grumsh.
Grumsh, and then the other one of Yule or whatever. So
right.
I get that, but like I just constructed a whole bunch of orcs. I have orc drummers, orc chieftains, orc soldiers. I have the great-faced orcs from the 4th edition, which I loved.
Right.
Like I use all of that. So
but no, I definitely like to mix and match my monsters a little bit, just to give a little tactical depth to an encounter. So like while the fighter is busy like dealing with one thing, the party has to watch out for like the spider on the ceiling that's like shooting web at them, or just having a nice mixture is a good way to kind of build an encounter. Depending on how the adventure is constructed, I like having like a teaser encounter early on with like a weaker monster that kind of leads to the boss fight. But if I'm not going to have like a traditional boss, 2 nice like medium range encounters are good. It is always good, if you're a DM, to find a encounter calculator that you like. They have a million of them online. D&D Beyond technically has one, but I'm not a fan of it currently. But I think last podcast we did, we threw some links up there with like some of the tools we use. But there's an encounter calculator I really like, where you can just type in, the number of players, their part, their level, the monster CRs, the number of monsters, hit the button, and it'll tell you, is this an easy encounter, a medium encounter, or a hard encounter? And just kind of feel out how you want to go, and then just find monsters in that CR that are fun, that they're themed toward the adventure you're doing, and that way you have kind of like a nice building block kind of structure to go off of.
Also,
That
keep in
kind of
mind,
keeps you from doing too much harm to your party unless you want to.
keep in mind that Dungeons and Dragons at its core is a game of chance. Just because you're running an easy encounter doesn't mean your party will succeed that well, because they could be rolling horribly. It happens.
Yeah.
I had a group of
in
players.
fact,
I had a group of players get KO'd on the first encounter of Lost Mines of Phandelver. 4 goblins.
That's yeah, but they're like first level characters. Like 4
Yeah,
goblins
but
can take first level
yeah,
characters
Right.
it really can.
pretty handily.
Yeah.
There was no surprise. It was just 5. It was 5 on 4.
Right.
Like they had
Right,
the
but,
action
like,
economy. Like,
1 or 2 bad rolls, and then it's all of a sudden like 4
Yeah.
on 2.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
You're not.
Yesterday's session that I had with my mini campaign, that one was literally I had 4 goblins, and 1 warg versus 5 players of 3rd level. And I almost killed them off because the way I set up the encounter, I put a lot of woods, and you know what? Come to realize that only 1 player had a missile weapon.
Oh, yeah.
And and so I just put and I use big maps. Anyone who knows, I use realistic maps on my game. So it's not like a small little area where you can just run, and why even have a map if you're not going to make a
Right.
big map?
Terrain matters.
Yeah. And so, the goblin's ability to nimble escape. So I would attack, nimble escape, and then I would run off into the woods, and they just didn't.
Right, they hide in the woods, and then you can't find them.
And then you can't find them, and they all had, of course, everyone dump stats their intelligence or wisdom, right? And so they all had crappy perception, passive perception. I'm like, well, that's on you. That's not my fault. I'm not fudging any of my rolls here. All my rolls, and it got pretty nasty. They almost died. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, for starting DMs or DMs that have been playing a while and wonder why your combats feel stale, use terrain features.
yeah.
Use
terrain feature.
make let there be, like, what, put a chandelier in the room.
Right?
Players will immediately put that to use. Have like a banister rail stairway. Have like some statues that can be knocked over.
Yeah,
Or if
you
you're out in the
should,
woods, have like some tree, like a log out in the middle of somewhere, or something perilously, like set up to where it could just go one way or the other, or have a stream or something with like little rocks that people have to hop between to do their fighting. Make it a little bit more action oriented and cinematic, because it gets really stale really fast when players are like, what do you do on your turn? Well, the melee characters run up and stand in front of the monster, and they will stay there until one of them is dead, and then they will move to the next monster.
Mhm.
And the range characters won't use their movement at all, because they can hit anywhere on the map from with their range spells or crossbows or whatever. So they stay right where they are and just shoot things. And then the combat just feels very, very stale in that way. You gotta keep the players moving. You gotta keep the monsters using fun tactics, and having terrain features really helps with that.
Yeah.
Big fan of that.
In the late night campaign that I ran, the other, or not campaign, one shot. The first encounter was in this kind of like underground tavern, and the floor is like super decayed. On the map you could see it was like broken down. And I had it set up when enough players were in the center of the floor collapsed. Into
Right, because of the weight.
lower level,
It was just
because
too
of
much
the
for the
weight.
floor.
Yeah. And that was really fun. And then there were more enemies down there, so I did a little map trickery. The people that fell through the hole got to see the enemies, but the people up top did not.
Yeah,
Pretty-
you should do that. In the other campaign I ran with they fought on an ice. It was like a frozen lake. They had a fight in a frozen lake, so it was like a village on the side of a lake, and there was like a lake. And I'm like, what would be cool? I'm gonna use the terrain features that no DM hardly ever uses. So moving on ice, if you move more than 10 feet
Like
on
10 feet or so, yeah, you
10 feet of
slide.
ice, you have to make an acrobatics check or you fall prone, right? Things like that. Also, deep snow counts as restrictions. I use that. Then I made
Yeah,
it where
difficult
if
terrain features. Very
yep,
very rarely do
yeah,
difficult terrain features come up
that
in
I
games.
even use different colored ice to show shallow ice and thick ice. So if a player went over shallow ice, then the player would have to make an acrobatics check or could fall into the frozen water. It was things like this. You should, of course, do that. Do things like that. I think that stuff is very cool. Something that I wanted to prove to players once on there was a group of 5 party of 5th level characters, and I was like, I bet you I can damage the crap out of you if I have one one hobgoblin warlord and 10 goblins. It was an open field with oil. So I made it to the hobgoblin and put oil on certain areas of the field. I
Hmm.
used concertina wire, sort of like how you're supposed to use it in the
Yeah.
defensive perimeter, a tactical perimeter, and a supplementary, right? So it's like a World War II kind of thing. And then I put barrels in different locations. I put a goblin behind every barrel. The players were and it was 100-foot map, so it was 100-foot yard field. They're the players, and all I did was I would have the goblins shoot out with their short bow, and then they would hide behind the barrels and then use their hide. So you can't
Right.
target them because if you don't see the creature, you can't target them with a magical item.
Right.
You can't target them. They're hiding behind a barrel. You have to either destroy the barrel or get up to the barrel or do some ingenious way of attacking. And the players were like stumped. They were like, oh my God, I can't target them? No, what are you going to do? Just stay there in the field? And nobody wanted to shoot forward into the field. Nobody wanted to fly into the air. It finally got to the point where the wizard got upset because he got stabbed, like lost half of his hit points, and he's like, "Screw it, fireball!" And he
Right.
fireballed the field, killed all the goblins because the goblins only have 7 hit points. But like, what he missed was I made you waste a 3rd level fireball spell on 5 goblins.
Right.
Success for the DM, in my opinion.
That's one of the other things I miss out of 4th edition is minion monsters. I miss them
Yeah,
so much.
you can
They were
still
the
use them.
best. They were I do on occasion, but like I just miss that they were an option where you're just like,
One hit
you know
point.
what? They only have the 1 hit point. You're supposed to be able to mow through them.
Yeah,
That's their job. Their job is to be a delicious little speed bump
cannon fodder.
or big, something that makes the wizard feel happy when he kills like 12 of them. But like statistically, it doesn't matter because 12 of them is the same as like 3 monsters.
Yeah, it was if I remember the formula, it was
It's four
four
minions to
minions,
1 monster.
one
Yeah.
monster. Yeah, it was the best. And I still follow that
Um,
format actually, sort of on 5th edition. It's just 5th edition multiplies it whenever you use the same monster, which I think is garbage.
right.
But whatever.
No, I miss the minion like math into I wish that was one of the things that had made the jump to 5th ed. That would have made encounter building so
Remind me to
much more
send you.
fun.
Someone converted that into 5th edition. Remind me to send you the conversion rules. I
Oh,
think
okay.
they're worth 10 experience. They only have like +2 to hit.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, they're minions. But you could but like any monster, any level of monster for the most part could be a minion. Like you could have like in your lizard folk fight with you have like one big cool lizard folk guy and like like a shaman, and those are the 2 monsters that matter, and then you'd have like 20 lizard men minions that the party could mow through
yeah,
while the boss was like doing his thing and the shaman was casting spells.
yeah. It was to absorb your attacks. Yeah, a shield between you getting to them and the actual monster.
um so yeah, but okay, so we've got basic one shots and kind of like encounter building down. So for a little bit longer campaign, so like your 3 shots or 4 shots or like a month long, um if you were let's say you were designing one, and we already know, like, I would assume who your big bad is. um do you do you ever, when you're building encounters, how do you introduce step into the big bad? Like, do they ever see the big bad first and then he goes away and like comes back at the end, a la like Final Fantasy rules? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's that Final Fantasy narrative storytelling where the big boss shows up, shows you that he's way stronger than you'll ever be, and then you'll catch him at the end. um, or or do you kind of like build encounters that kind of like pull the party into a path that will eventually lead them to the big reveal?
Okay, so for me, that's my second one is the what I do. I rarely show the big bad villain. I'm a big fan, and Milk here will tell you, he was in my oath game where, and we still haven't finished that last little session where the villain is actually the hero. They're there because they were originally sent to investigate this hero who's been missing. He's like the champion. He's well loved by the organization. Think of Captain America going missing. If Captain
Right.
America went missing, the Avengers want to go find Captain America, and they find out as they go on this mission. This is a 3-part mission, and so 3 sessions, so 4, 8, 12-hour adventure basically. And as they go along, they're fighting barbarians, they're fighting bandits, they're fighting cultists. And as they go through each encounter in every adventure, they find out that they're hearing stories that Captain America, we'll just call him Captain America, has turned to the dark side. That he has become defranchised with never making a difference against the forces of evil, and that he decided upon himself to do whatever needs to be done to finally win the war. He's going to win the war. He's going to do whatever it takes to win the war, right? He's Captain America. And if anyone could win the war, Captain America can win the war. And if that means he has to use the dark side, if he has to be Luke using the dark side to kill Vader, small price to pay. It's his sacrifice. If anyone could do it, Luke Skywalker / Captain America could do it. And so this went on through an entire series of a slow burn. They never met Darius. They never met the Paladin. All they heard were stories. NPCs telling them, oh yeah, we met him. He was talking about this. And then as they met more players throughout the series of other NPCs through the series of the adventure, they discover that he's gone more native. Now he's wearing goblin ears. He's dumped his armor. He's no longer wearing his holy symbol. His beard has grown out. His hair is unkempt. He's now like he's gone native. He's got like a loincloth and he's putting tattoos on his face and he's hunting these goblins because he's obsessed, and his overzealousness has taken his judgment is all gone. All he's thinking is
Right. He's
extermination.
gone insane.
He's gone insane. Basically, Captain America's gone insane, right? And yeah, and so to me that's the best, the slow burn, especially when they're meeting NPCs that are trained by him. So not only is Captain America villain, but he made another group of Avengers, the Dark Avengers, that are there to fight for him, and the players have to fight him, and it was a difficult encounter. And they're like, holy crap, this like we're fighting like Dark Avengers. We're the Avengers and we're fighting the Dark Avengers. And now, right? So like the build up to me of that is awesome. I think that's cool when the player's own imagination gets the better of them on how powerful this person should be. And it shouldn't just be black and white. Like, are the players going to just kill him? Can Captain America be saved and be taken to a psychiatric unit and be brought back?
The answer is no.
Right? If anyone could be redeemed, if anyone deserves a chance at redemption, it's Captain America. You shouldn't just kill Captain America because he joined the dark side.
I'm killing him,
Like,
and you can't stop me.
Right?
You
But
will
see,
die.
and so me as a GM, I've always focused on that gray. I don't like, oh, it's Vader. Anyone can kill Vader, right? But when you got to kill Mara Jade, when you have to kill Han Solo, that's a whole different story, right? He's an anti-hero, right? A vigilante, when you're killing the Punisher, you don't want to kill the Punisher because he's doing good, right? And so I've always
In a very questionable way, but yes.
yeah, right. So, but I've always pushed that kind of agenda into my games. I like that. I like forcing players to make decisions that are not. It's not that simple. I want the players to conflict amongst each other in their opinions. Like, oh, am I a paladin of lawful good? Does he deserve a chance at redemption? Should I be killing him? Is what he did of an act of ultimate betrayal and should be killed because of his ultimate act of betrayal? So, to me, you could glimpse the monster, the main boss, which they did in the last adventure. They glimpsed him and he escaped. They didn't fight him. He didn't say any words. They just saw him praying in his loincloth with his great sword that is now made of bone, right, from the remains of his enemies. and he left. And then they tracked him, and they found out that he's in a temple, and that's where we left off. So I guess I gave you the long answer, but yes, I think that a monster that you can give. You don't want to give what's the word when you explain things in movies? Exposition.
Oh, exposition, yeah.
Yeah, right. I don't believe in that. I don't like that. You can't build a relationship or a bond through that method, right? Um, I shouldn't
Right.
care.
Like Star Wars can get away with the crawl at the beginning, but that's
Yeah,
that's just setting up the story that you
yeah,
now get to
right.
watch.
Yeah, and you know what I mean. And so, and the best example is that whole Willow encounter in the Mad Mage, right, with the dragon and all that, the green dragon and Willow,
Hmm.
and if the players don't know the backstory of Willow and her lover being a displacer beast, and that the dragon got betrayed, and you're supposed to actually fight for the dragon, but if you don't know that,
I'm very curious about the so I having run Dungeon of the Mad Mage.
yeah,
Uh and I don't know if have you read through Dungeon of the Mad Mage
yeah,
at
yeah,
all?
yeah, of
Okay.
course,
So I am curious to see how this version of it plays out because like I having watched the adventure that you guys went through, I I distinctly noticed a lack of pointing out the sword that's in its head.
yeah,
That's mind controlling the dragon.
yes, yes,
Um,
and
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 I
then
don't know if that's like a narrative choice on Kyle's part. Potentially, it might be. I don't know. Or if that's something that like he just forgot to mention, and that's something you guys as a players should know because that will influence how things change with the dragon drastically.
of course, and then so we ended up killing the dragon, right?
Right.
And it wasn't just that, but then like even the way he explained how we're supposed to care for the dragon, it was a history role. Really, like that to me, that's exposition, right? Like that's like so we heard legends and stories about it rather than experience it, right? By meeting other people that should have told us this tragic love story that's happening.
Right. Um, but no, it's like I said, it's different takes on it and
Yeah,
all. But
yeah.
yeah, I was just
No, it's fine,
when
but
I having like ran the adventure or read through it, and I was just like, oh, we got to the dragon. That'll be fun. And then it went differently.
yeah, yeah. Enough
I
said.
mean,
So
it didn't run that differently. Like my party killed the dragon too. Like it
yeah,
was very similar in that regard.
yeah.
But
So yeah, so that's my answer about like monsters and villains. I think that yeah, the build up to me is very important. I've always been good with the slow burn. I like the slow burn. I think I do a good job of explaining the back history of my villain. I want my villain to have impact, and you shouldn't just want to kill him because sometimes some villains are cool and you want to bring them back as a reoccurring villain. That's
right.
right. Like how many GMs don't? A lot of GMs don't do that. It's different when you plot armor a villain, but you could definitely bring back a villain or something like that
Well,
later
yeah,
and
there's a lot of
make it
magic in
cool.
D&D. People
Yeah,
come back from the dead a lot. Like if you can resurrect players,
yeah, you can
then a
resurrect
bunch
a
of
villain.
cultists can bring back a villain. Like this is
Yeah,
perfectly acceptable.
Like I
uh,
said,
Um,
villains can do anything that the players can.
with
yeah, yeah,
with that in mind, um, so now that we've moved out of like one shot territory into like reaching encounters, right? Uh, with a whole like little multiple adventure scenario, how how do like short and long rests kind of factor into this strategy? Because we've discussed this a little bit amongst us before this, where we have a lot of players who they get into that one encounter, they blow all their goodies, and then they turn around and you're like, oh, we just want to take a short rest, or let's the fighters are doing okay, but the spellcasters are really they're tapped out. Maybe we should take a long rest so that you're like, guys, you guys have only been down here for like 20 minutes. You can't This isn't a 20-minute workday scenario where like every 20 minutes you can take 8 hours off. Like this is not. So how do you control for that?
go ahead, Milk. You want to take this one first?
Absolutely. There's a couple ways you can do it. One, it depends on where they're trying to rest. They're trying to rest in the middle of the dungeon, and they've been making a racket. Something's gonna find them, come across them, and they're gonna have to deal with that in the middle of their rest. They're
Which
wasting
then
time.
negates the entirety
Yeah,
of the
it
long
negates
rest.
the entire thing. Another thing is a sense of urgency. Like Rom said earlier, if they have somewhere to go, someplace to be, if they're on a deadline, then they can't necessarily take that rest. Uh, if we're talking, I mean, like let's be honest, in a day, like how often during a day do you take a nap? Like think about your entire month. How often have you taken a nap in the middle of the day?
For 8 hours, right?
Well, no,
No,
even for an hour.
even for an
Like
hour. Like
short rests are an hour.
Well,
how
believe it or not, there is a rule for how many times you can take a long rest.
right.
I believe
Yeah,
it's 8 hours for every 24 hours, I think.
right. You
Am I
should
right? I'm not making that up, am I?
no,
Uh,
I'm pretty sure that's
so I know. So the way that the rules expect is that in every adventuring day, the party is expected to get one long rest at the end of the day
Correct.
and like two short rests, kind of like
Yes. During that whole
in
day.
the
during
middle
that
there. So, but again, like that's for the whole
for the
day.
whole day.
And
But if we're
I've more
looking
than once had parties be like, we had one encounter.
short rest,
20 minutes into the like we just got out of our long rest. 20 minutes into the cave exploration, we want a short rest. I'm like, all right. And then like after the second encounter, they're like, oh, we should have another short rest. And I'm like, guys, you're only 40-ish minutes into
into the
your 8-hour adventure day before you're allowed to take a long rest. Are you sure you want to burn your last short rest right now?
yeah, it's like you have to think about how it would play out in real time. Are you gonna take 3 hours of rest a day? No, you're not. Minus your 8 hours that you take to sleep and like eat food and dinner and rest for the night. You're gonna spend like at least 16, like 14 to 16 hours out and about doing stuff. That's your job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
You're absolutely right, man. Like I said, like we were discussing earlier, I sort of take that option away from the players. Because if you give, now sometimes I'm okay with it. Like I get it if it's a really unique environment where they could take a short rest and they took a beating. I get it. Also, as a GM, I'm very aware. We're like, oh man, I injured them more than I thought, and that's when you fudge things. Like you're
yeah,
like, oh my, I drained them of all their things, and they're about to fight the main boss. They're going to be screwed. You might be like, okay, take a short rest, or maybe you can take a long rest. I get that kind of thing. I think you have to be flexible. If you're just black and white or very strict with the way this is how I wrote my adventure and that's how it's going to go, you're not going to be a very successful GM. First of
Right.
it's
all,
very
Or
situational.
your party's gonna like have to really learn to
yeah,
ration their stuff if you're gonna be
right,
super strict
yeah.
on it.
So there's no golden rule here. You just got to stay flexible
If
and be conscious of what your players are doing.
like if you like absolutely like destroy your party in one encounter, wouldn't it be natural for those characters to be like, "Hey, we're in really bad condition. Let's take a break to recover." Like that's just
Yeah,
Right.
natural. Like that's something
And
they
that's
would do.
correct.
and
Right.
that makes
And
sense.
then it's okay for them to do that. But if we're talking, oh, we just, we're in here 20 minutes, we just had a fight, we're mildly tired, then it's
Yeah,
not so appropriate.
yeah, it's totally a thing. In the last adventure I ran yesterday, the barbarian went into frenzy. He's a berserker. And as you
Right.
know, frenzy gives you one level of exhaustion, and you cannot remove it until a long rest. Now he's at disadvantage, and his whole character is based around strength, but he's at disadvantage on all strength rolls. And he's just so upset trying to convince the players to take a long rest. And they're like, oh, we have 2 days to find this druid, or they're going to execute the bard that we're here to rescue. Like, we can't, we don't have the time. And now he's having to go the entire adventure, you know what I
Rolling
mean, the mini campaign
disadvantage.
with disadvantage. Yeah, and
Yep.
that's how it should be. Same thing
Well,
with
you
paladins.
expended the resource and now you're
Yeah,
paying for the resource you expended.
you wanted to pump out your frenzy on the very first encounter against like three minor goblins. That's your fault, man, not mine. And I mean, I do feel that there is a level of adjustment between players and the GM, right? Like, again, every GM has a style. I tend to make mine grittier, darker, a little more horror based, not horror based, but like definitely more. closer to realism than fantastical. And so sometimes when players are used to a certain DM who's very fantastical, gives them a lot of leeway, and then they go to another DM, which gets to another question is when you defranchise players, when you're doing players wrong with an encounter, when you have a GM who is doing an encounter a certain way and the player is playing it that way, and then he goes in with another GM like me who's very strict with the rules, who's I'm not making up rules, I'm following the rules,
Right.
and you're not having a good time or you don't want to play in my game because I'm enforcing the very rules that you should have been playing already, you as the GM did a disservice to the player, in my opinion, because right, the player is not always going to play with you. It's different if it's your friend and you're playing with your friends, but due to technology now, Roll20, Adventure League, you're going to play with different GMs now, right? You have that privilege, something that I didn't have growing up or playing D&D, where now you can meet different people and different DMs and experience it. I've liked that. I've always liked different players in my games because you learn something from players all the time,
Right.
and that includes building your encounters. So, yeah.
Right. And yeah, doing a lot of because I run the D&D Encounters program at my local store. So we do a lot of like very structured one shots. A lot of newer players come through, and you rules are helpful. And yes, this is a game where the main rule is some of these rules are not as helpful as others, and please ignore them if they cause problems. Uh, but yeah, we have had a few instances where players will kind of latch on to one DM, kind of get used to their style, and then just kind of feel like a little fish out of water scenario. When once they hit another DM, and it's an adjustment period, but getting different perspectives from different DMs helps you kind of grow as a player and kind of see what you like and what you don't, and maybe get you interested in doing it your way. So
Yeah.
you get to be the DM someday. And we always look, as DMs, we always support players stepping up and becoming DMs.
Yes, we
There's
do.
just
Yeah,
there's not enough
there's
of us
not
in the
enough.
world, and we would like there to be more because we would like to play at
Plus,
some point.
DMing gives a different perspective to the game. When you sit behind the screen, you understand what it means to run a game. And when you go back to playing, like as a player, you understand the effort that the DM has
Yeah, you
put
tend to be
in.
more cooperative.
You tend
Yeah,
to be more cooperative, and that leads for a better game overall.
Right. As a as
very
as
true.
as a very in our area, I do a lot of the DMing, but every chance I get to be a player, I am like one of the
So
most
grateful.
gracious players for the DM. I'm just like,
That's
you need us to go on the adventure? Yes, let's go on the adventure. Like what's the plot point you need the party to bite on? I'm already there.
Yeah,
Let's go do it.
I'm chowing
that's
down.
that's funny. See, I'm the same way. Like I'm always looking to play a game, but see, because I'm so like lawful neutral with rules, I tend to I want to play that way. Like that's not just the way I am as a DM. That's
Right.
how I am as a player. I don't mind homebrew rules as long as there's consistency. Consistency to me is more important than anything else. As
Right.
long as you're not making things up on the fly, I'm cool with it. As long
Yep.
as we have a discussion of what we're supposed to be doing, how we're supposed to be running the encounter, what we're right, that's all okay. Because I, as a player, have now made a choice. I accept these rules. If I don't like it, then I shouldn't be playing in your game, right? Like, why would I play your game if I'm not enjoying your game? I never understood that. And so like you, I'm the same way. I want to play, but I do hold a standard. I always say to myself, man, I wish I could meet a DM who's more like me the way I run my game. Like, that would be so fucking cool. Like, I wish I could DM myself.
Right.
how self-centered of an asshole am I?
That's always the curse of the DM. You're just like, man, I wish I could run in a game where I ran.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
wish I could play in this game that I'm running.
right. But I
Oh,
can't. So you have to do the best you can, and you try to. And so yeah. So to me, if I don't enjoy a game and it's not like at all to my liking, then I won't play in it. I prefer to DM over play far more often. Don't get me wrong, I will play on a good game on occasion. It's a nice break when I get bored or when I want to feel I've been away from playing too long, because you lose perspective, like you said. But yeah, I definitely DM way more than I play.
Yeah.
all right.
I
Well,
just I
Oh, go
think
ahead.
I think when you learn to DM and you go back to being a player and you're feeling a bit more cooperative, it definitely helps the DM well. Because you understand what it means to take time and effort into preparing, and you respect that. It's only a benefit for the game.
Does that ever have? Let me ask you a personal question about
Yeah.
that. Does that ever have the opposite effect? You think
Yes,
to you?
it
Like,
can.
give me an example of that.
It can because a lot of DMs, like especially if you've been DMing a long time, you know what the stat blocks look like,
Or you just understand like the flow of an
or
adventure.
you understand,
Like
Yeah,
there are
that's good. That's
more than once where I've been in a game where I know where this is going,
Mhm.
even if I've never played in this adventure. Like if it's not even a published adventure, if it's like a homebrew adventure that somebody made, and I'm like, no, I understand all these story beats. I know exactly where we're going with
Yeah,
this.
or even like
Um,
if you've played through all the published adventures, sometimes you're trying to get ahead of the curve. You're trying to
Mhm.
beat what happens before it happens, and that can cause some problems in the game.
I
Uh,
was talking. I was talking more along the lines of a DM. Like, for example, if the DM isn't prepared or the DM's not doing his due diligence in running the game,
oh yeah,
do you
that
think
does
that
frustrate me on occasion. Yeah.
do you think that because, like, okay, so me, right? I take pride in my games, right? Like, to me, that's my reputation as a dungeon master, which I take very seriously. I don't think I'm a weak dungeon master.
you're
I don't
not.
think I really put forth effort on all my tokens, my
Yeah,
story.
you do.
I don't neglect anything that I do in my games, right? If I don't run a good game, don't get me wrong, do I have shitty days like everyone else? Of course.
Hmm.
Other days where like I take things on short notice and I get a little overwhelmed, of course. But in general, I think I keep a pretty good track record of what I'm doing. But do you think that as a GM, when you're running an encounter or you're part of an encounter as a player, that that sometimes does the opposite effect where like you're like, man, you're not putting any effort, you're not
Yeah,
doing anything,
for
and it just
sure.
does that make you want to play the game less, or are you just that much
Oh,
more
that'll
understanding?
definitely turn me off a game.
Oh,
Like
Yeah,
really?
if it's like now it depends on like newness or skill level of the DM. Like
Okay,
if they're a newer play, like I will give newer DMs
more
a
leeway.
lot of leeway
yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
I
agree.
recognize immediately. I'm like I've been there. I know I know that it might be hard and you're not familiar yet with like where to find information or how to organize things or stuff like that. We've all done that. But like I've played in games of DMs up at our in our local area who have either I know that they have been running games for years or they have purportedly like been like, well, I've been DMing for like 10 years or what. I'm like, and this is where we still are, like,
this is
are
where you're
you
at. Okay.
Damn, dude.
um so just I will step out of those games. I will not, I'm not interested in, like completely trashing DMs at their own table
Oh
or
yeah,
anything.
I agree.
That's
Yeah,
mean
that's
and there's no good
rude.
reason for that. But like I will immediately after realizing that this is an experienced group that isn't playing in the way that would work for me. I have no qualms about being like this just isn't for me.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
about you, Milk? I'm curious in your answer here.
Uh, DM or player, I'm always there to play the game 100%. You know, I might have some bad days as both DM and player where I'm not gonna be where I want to be. Um, but if I don't see the other players, and especially if I don't see the DM putting forth the same amount of energy towards the game that I am, it's not the place for me. It's not
Yeah,
my
I
table.
agree. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how DM gives you that perspective sometimes, and I think you said it right as well, Ben, about like how you give a little more leeway to certain GMs. Sometimes you got to give people a break or
Yeah,
help them along. Yeah, definitely. You definitely get a soft heart for that kind of thing.
I'm all for
Right.
helping new players because we were all there once, and I was
Yeah,
there a lot more recently than you were. Uh,
yeah.
but you know,
It's interesting being on the server on Kyle's server here on Dungeon Divers. It's really reminded me that there's a lot of new players, and you have to really make an effort to get new players. Else you're never going to get new players into the game, right? The game will
Right.
die.
You
Um,
always need new blood or
yeah,
else like this isn't.
it depends what I'm doing and what I'm running. Me personally, I'm really anti-newbie. I know that like I'm such an elitist asshole. I usually don't. I hate newbies. I don't want to teach people the game. Uh, Now, don't get me wrong. I do it like at my gaming store, like you do. I do. That's
Mhm.
different. I go there with the mindset. That's what I'm doing. I do it once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks. Right. I get it when you're like, okay, they're new players. You're gonna try to help them. You're doing as much your due diligence to help them. I do that because I feel that's important for your gaming community. So I definitely do that. But in general, when I'm running like a high level game, like my campaign, I'm sorry now, I'm not having any new players in that new campaign. Like they're
Right.
not from.
And like I
They
said,
need
on
to have at
the
least a basic understanding of Roll20. They need to have a basic understanding of D&D. I'm not asking for
right.
experts,
I
pro
I
gamers,
got I
but I'm
gotta
asking.
say, I try to be very lenient with new players, but oh god, it makes me so angry when they can't look at the D&D Beyond page and just read it for a couple seconds to find where their dexterity button is. Mm.
Like I said, I'm way more forgiving in that regard because, like I said, a lot of my
So
everything I
bad.
do on the server is mostly with new players,
Yeah, God
and
bless
I
you, man.
will I will happily let them, explore the space to their heart's content, and we will, if like, well, I don't have, I don't know how to do this. I will happily like go through the steps every time, be like, and this is how you press the button
Hey,
because you
man,
need
that's
to know how to
great,
do
bro.
that because
Listen,
otherwise they're never going to learn, and then you won't get new players. So,
my head bows down to you, sir, because
Yeah,
like
yeah.
really you have
uh,
a patience
You're
that,
too
and
kind.
you have my respect, dude, because I seriously,
um,
you truly do love GMing and you really want people to be a part of the game, and that's really freaking cool, dude. Not everyone can, right? Someone's got to be Superman, right? Like
right.
we all can't
Um,
be Batman.
I've in my Monday game so far, I've more than once had to like completely like build the character from scratch and then hold it, like have the PDF next to me so that I could, talk through everything on it
Yeah.
with the player as they were playing because they've never played D&D at all. They were like, "We're here to play. I don't know how to play." And I'm like, "Well, we're going to teach you today.
Yeah, we'll teach you.
It's
You'll
going to be
figure it out.
great."
I
That's
just
cool, man.
I don't mind
That's really
teaching
cool.
players the rules. I hate it when people look at the most workable UI in D&D and say, "What is this? How do I work this?" I get you're new,
It
but just
happens.
look at the
Yeah.
buttons. It's
You just
self-explanatory.
Well,
You'll
it's
Yeah, but
find
it's
it.
a lot of
it's
a lot of
it's
people
kind of.
just you got to get that muscle memory in there.
Yeah, man,
You
it's a new
gotta
game. Like I didn't start D&D. I mean, I've been with D&D Beyond when it first came out because I've always wanted to stay up to touch with technology of D&D, which again is another topic. But there's some people like Regal, for example. He really didn't get into the D&D Beyond until he started playing in my games when I met him at my local gaming store. There's just people who, why would you? If you go to a gaming store and play Adventure League, you don't need D&D Beyond.
right. And I'm
Yeah,
very I really like D&D Beyond. It's a wonderful tool. I've enjoyed every bit of it. But like on when it comes to things like Roll20, you're a wizard at Roll20. I
yeah.
know almost nothing. Like if you were like, "Hey Ben, it's time to play a game. Get your Roll20 character together." I'll be like, "Look,
What?
there are buttons I need to press,
What?
right?" Like it's fine. It's not that I haven't played in Roll20 games, but I do not
Yeah.
begin to understand it at that level. And I accept that and I'm fine with that because a bulk of my role playing is all done, live and in table
Yeah.
service,
Same here.
not online. So, or the ones that I do are just in the Discord voice chat. So, but no, there's a lot of fun technology out there and it'll make a lot of fun for the people who can master it. But
Um,
all of that aside, we have now moved slightly past our allotted time slot for this particular talk.
episode.
Dude, it was a great talk though, man.
It was, and I look forward to more of these in the future. For those who are new, we do these every Sunday around 1 o'clock Central Time. We have a lot of streams that are happening. We have a Tuesday stream, a Thursday stream. I think is there a Wednesday stream now?
No,
Is
not a
that
Wednesday
official?
stream. We're gonna have a Sunday stream, I believe, starting September 19th. So in about 2 weeks.
Okay. So we've got that going here in a little bit. Important ending bits. Uh, Feel free to follow us. We
I
have
have
a,
I
I believe
have
there's a
I have
follower giveaway.
there is a follower giveaway. And hold on. I
Did we hit?
Oh,
believe
do you have like a whole spiel?
yes,
What did we
we
hit?
do.
100 or 200?
We're at 100 is the goal. But how many followers?
We
We
should
got
be
3 new
what,
followers
11
today.
to go?
We
So 9
got,
to go?
We got 3 new followers today. I'm trying to find our total follow count. Hold on.
We're getting there, man. We're getting there.
We're
It's
at
crazy.
89.
It's crazy
89.
that when I got on. Yeah, it's crazy when I got on there. We were only at like 10.
Well, no, that's subscribers. That's different.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, 89
Um,
followers. So we only need 11 more. And when we hit that 100, one of you luckily followers will be getting a signed copy, Second Generation Player's Handbook, signed by Gary Gygax. Geraldo Gygaxator sounds homebrew.
Yeah,
It's because it is.
In that regard, if you are a Amazon Prime subscriber, good news. You have Twitch Prime for free. If you haven't used it yet, please send it our way.
Free sub.
The more it's a free sub for you, it helps us. The more support we get, the more we grow, the more stuff we can do, and get out there to entertain you guys, or more of these talks we can do to kind of help you guys learn how to play some D&D better, or give you some interesting ideas of how to make your campaigns more fun.
And I
so there's that.
feel obliged to let you guys know, if you do want to support the channel more, we are in September, which means gifted subs are 20% off.
Oh, cool.
So
That
if
is
you want to
true. It is
support the
September.
channel, it is September. You'll be able to give us gifted subs for cheaper than normal, if you see fit. Completely unnecessary, but we do appreciate it.
Right.
Here at Dungeon
Again,
Matters.
I wholeheartedly support the Twitch Prime sub. Amazon has tons of money, and they're giving you free money to give other people. You don't have to give it to us, but please do. But always,
Please do.
But always, if you have a free Twitch Prime subscription, never neglect to use it. It's free money that's just sitting there.
Yep.
I think that's it for the day, right?
I think so. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, it
Again,
was
we
great.
should we'll have another talk next week. We're gonna have a chat and figure out what that is later, and it'll be lots of fun, I'm sure. So other than that, thanks for stopping by, and we're glad to have you.
We'll see you
Deuce.
on Tuesday for Tuesday of Annihilation, but now it is time to say goodbye.
Hi, I'm Lombot Goldstein, but you can call me Lombot. Well, I'm not having a panic attack about the ever-increasing stack of unfiled paperwork waiting in my office during my adventure. I'm dreaming of better days, spent in the Dungeon Divers Discord server. There, I could find fantastic stories, meet new people, make new friends, and share new and wonderful experiences, completely distracting me from my real-world duties and obligations. It's ruining my life. Anyways, they're running multiple games a week, every week, with experienced DMs and an active moderation team, so make sure you come by and check things out. Also, make sure you're subscribed. It's free with Prime, and you'll no longer have to watch ads. It's a wonderful thing. Anyways, I've finished dissociating enough to do this advertisement, so